Welcome to Huddle at Home. I'm Mason.
And I'm Natalie. So glad you could join us today, everyone.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting and I think super important topic on deck for you today, especially for those of you who, have kids in youth sports, specifically baseball.
Absolutely. Today, we're diving deep, like really deep, into the world of travel baseball. It's something that, it's pretty big now, and there's a lot to unpack from what it actually is to, whether it's even worth it for your family.
Exactly. We're going to cover the ins and outs, the good, the bad, the costly, everything you need to know if you're a parent or even a young player thinking about taking that step into, this more competitive baseball path. So get ready for a pretty comprehensive but hopefully very conversational chat about it all. So let's just jump right in, shall we? What exactly is travel baseball? I mean, for those who might be new to this term.
Yeah, it's a great place to start, Mason. Essentially, travel baseball is a much more competitive form of youth baseball, compared to your traditional recreational leagues.
Right. Like, it's not just playing locally on Saturday mornings anymore. This is pretty serious.
Exactly. It's organized through regional and national tournament organizations. We're talking big names here like USSA, AAU, Triple Crown, Perfect Game. And it's really, it exploded from being kind of a niche thing in the 1990s to honestly almost a necessity now for serious players who want to advance.
Yeah, it's become the path for many. And how does it typically work? Like, what's the structure of these tournaments? Because it's not a regular season, is it?
No, it's definitely not. It's very tournament-style weekend play. So you usually start with pool games, and then that's followed by single elimination rounds. Teams typically play anywhere from 2 to 8 games per event, and they often participate in 2 tournaments a month. It's a lot.
2 tournaments a month? Wow. So it's constant. And I've heard, too, a lot of these clubs host qualifiers for national championships, right? And then for older players, like 14 and up, you're looking at exposure tournaments where college scouts might be present.
That's right. That's a huge draw for many, actually, that college exposure piece. But it also begs the question, how are these teams actually formed? Are they just, a bunch of friends getting together, or is it more structured?
Well, it varies, It can be anything from a parent-run team, which is pretty common at younger ages, to more coach-led operations, or even these really large, almost franchise-like organizations.
Oh, like the Garza-Car Baseball Group, for instance. They have multiple teams, right, across different regions and age groups. They're like a professional setup almost.
Yeah, precisely. So you can imagine, depending on the club, the level of organization and, frankly, the commitment required can vary pretty wildly. It's a whole ecosystem out there.
It truly is. So once a parent, decides, okay, travel baseball is something we want to explore, the next big hurdle, I imagine, is actually finding a team. Where do they even begin?
That's a great question, Allie. And honestly, it's a mix of old school and new school methods. Word of mouth is still huge, like talking to other parents, coaches but then you also have national sites like USSA and fieldlevel.com.
Oh, so like dedicated platforms for this.
Exactly. And don't forget state forums and, Facebook groups. They're surprisingly active for tryout announcements and just, general team leads. It's really about tapping into those communities.
That makes sense. So once you've found a few options, then what? Because it can't just be about who's got a spot, right? There have to be really important factors to consider before committing.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where parents really need to do their homework. The first and arguably the most crucial is coaching. You want a coach who's fair, who's really focused on skill development for all players. And you gotta, watch out for bias. If the coach has their own child on the team, sometimes that can create issues.
That's a fair point. You don't want your kid sitting the bench because the coach's kid is getting all the reps. What about the elephant in the room for many families? Cost. Because I hear travel baseball can be quite expensive.
It can be, yeah. The annual range is typically about $500 to $2,500, but honestly, it can
easily exceed that, like way beyond.
Wow. What drives that up so much?
Well, it's a lot of factors. Geography, where you live impacts travel, the tournament level, if you're going to higher profile national events, those fees add up. Equipment needs, which are constant, facility rentals for practice, especially in colder climates. And if the staff are paid professionals, that's another significant chunk. So it's not just the team fee, it's the whole ecosystem of expenses around it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And speaking of geography and travel, how much does location play a role in choosing a team?
A big role. If you happen to live in what they call baseball hubs, like California, Florida, or Texas, you might actually reduce your travel because there are so many competitive teams locally. But for many, many families, it means commuting many miles to get to those highly competitive teams. It's a huge commitment, obviously, of time and gas money.
So you might find a great team an hour or two away, and that just becomes your weekend reality.
Exactly. Just part of the package. Another really important one is the club's mission and organization. Parents need to make sure the club's goals, whether it's focused on fun, development, or exposure, really align with their family values because, frankly, reputation and conduct matter. College coaches, for instance, often avoid organizations that have a tainted reputation. They're looking at the whole picture.
So it's not just about winning, it's about the environment and integrity of the program. That's really important. What about something like playing time? Because I know that's a big concern for parents, right? Like, you're investing all this money and time. You want to make sure your child is actually playing.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to understand the expected reps your child will get and also the position flexibility. In travel ball, versatility is highly valued for prospects. If your child can play multiple positions, that's a huge plus. But you need to know upfront, is this a team where everyone gets equal playing time or is it strictly merit-based?
Right. You want to manage those expectations from the start. And tied into that, I suppose, is the skill level fit, isn't it? Because you don't want them on a team that's too easy, but you also don't want them completely overwhelmed.
Precisely. You need to choose a team that challenges your child appropriately. If it's too easy, they'll get bored. And frankly, it discourages growth. But if the team is too elite for their current skill set, it can be really overwhelming. And that can, lead to burnout and frustration. It's about finding that sweet spot for development.
And I guess this all leads back to what we touched on earlier, which is the sacrifices involved. Because all of these factors, the cost, the travel, the commitment, they all add up, don't they?
They really do, Natalie. Travel ball demands significant time, a lot of money, and social trade-offs. We're talking missed family events, a potential impact on community ties, and, those personal expenses just keep adding up. It's not a decision to take lightly.
So, given all these sacrifices and the intensity we've been discussing, how does travel baseball actually compare to, say, Little League? Because for a lot of parents, that's their baseline, right?
That's a great transition, Natalie, because they are really distinct. Think of Little League as your classic, low-cost, community-based seasonal play. Fewer games, all local, and mostly it's parent coaching, very volunteer-driven.
Right, that familiar neighborhood feel. Everyone knows everyone, and it's like a few nights a week.
Exactly. Now, travel baseball, on the other hand, is year-round, it's intense, it's super travel-heavy, and it's specifically designed to bridge the gap to high school and college play. It's a much more, professionalized approach in a way.
So it's not just about, having fun with your friends after school anymore. It's really geared towards, a higher level of performance.
Precisely. And for serious athletes, there's a really critical transition that happens around ages 11 to 12. That's when many families start looking at travel ball as the next step, rather than sticking with recreational leagues, because the focus shifts pretty dramatically.
So if your child's serious about, playing beyond middle school, travel ball almost becomes like the prerequisite. It's not just an option.
Yeah, it's often seen as that because the competition level, the coaching quality, the exposure, it's just on a completely different plane compared to, your typical Little League experience. Not to say Little League is invaluable, but its purpose is different.
Right. So it's really about aligning the child's ambition with the right program then.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about what travel baseball is and how it compares to Little League. Now I think it's time to really dig into the good, the bad, and, well, maybe the ugly. What are the main pros and cons of getting into travel baseball?
That's a really important part of the conversation because it's not all sunshine and trophies, but it's also not all doom and gloom. On the pro side, first and foremost, you get really high-level competition. You know, your child is playing against other serious athletes, which naturally pushes them to improve.
So they're not just like easily dominating every game. They're actually being challenged.
Exactly. And with that, you usually get really, really high-quality coaching. These aren't just, volunteer parents who played a bit in high school. These are often coaches with extensive experience, sometimes former college or even pro players who really understand the nuances of the game and proper development.
That makes sense. Better coaching, tougher competition, it all feeds into skill growth, right?
Absolutely. They'll play a lot more games, get a lot more reps, and that consistent, intensive training really accelerates skill development. And for older players, a huge pro is the scout and college exposure. These tournaments, especially the showcase ones we touched on, are where college scouts and recruiters go to find talent.
So if your kid has aspirations of playing in college, this is almost like a non-negotiable step.
For many, yeah, it becomes that. And, beyond just the technical skills, there's also the character building aspect, learning to compete at a high level, handling pressure, dealing with wins and losses. It's all part of, growing as a person.
Right. Resilience and teamwork in a high-stakes environment. But, of course, there's a flip side. What are some of the biggest drawbacks or cons that parents really need to be aware of?
Oh, there are definitely cons. The big one that always comes up is cost. We talked about it early, but it's expensive. I mean, often over $2,500 annually, and that's just club fees. Not even counting travel, equipment, lessons. It really adds up.
Yeah, I've heard stories of families spending like 5 figures in a year, depending on the level and how far they're traveling.
Absolutely. And that leads right into the next con, the heavy time commitment in travel. These teams often play 2 tournaments a month, year-round training. You're looking at hundreds of days a year dedicated to baseball. Weekends are gone. Family vacations often revolve around tournaments, and school can even be missed.
That's a huge lifestyle shift for the whole family, not just the player.
It really is. And then there's the environment itself. It can be pretty cutthroat. We talked about playing time expectations earlier, but because it's so competitive, some players might get fewer reps than they need for development if the coach is focused purely on winning. It's not always about individual growth in every moment.
So the pressure to perform is intense, and if you're not, you might find yourself on the bench more than you'd like.
Precisely. And the rigorous training itself can sometimes be a burden. We've heard about burnout, injuries. It's a lot to ask of young athletes. And, one con that's really important to highlight is the lack of socioeconomic diversity. Because it's so expensive, it inherently excludes a lot of talented kids whose families simply can't afford it.
That's a really good point. It creates a barrier to entry, which is a shame because talent isn't limited by income. So while the benefits are clear for those who can access it, the costs, both financial and personal, are significant. And that lack of diversity is a real concern for the sport as a whole.
And that actually segues perfectly into our next point, which is really focusing on the broader criticisms and, frankly, controversies surrounding travel baseball. Because, as you just said, the financial barrier is a massive one.
It truly is. I mean, it's not just the club fees, right? It's everything else that piles on top of it. You hear stories, even someone like Andrew McCutchen from MLB, he highlighted this. He talked about how, $100 a night motel room, $30 for gas, a $300 tournament fee. If you're a poor kid with raw ability, it's just not enough. You can't even get there.
That quote really hammers it home, doesn't it? It's not about talent, it's about access. And that's heartbreaking. For the kids who have the potential but not the means, it creates a sort of an elite pathway that excludes so many.
Absolutely. And beyond just the individual financial burden, there's also a community effect that's pretty significant.
For sure. This is something that often gets overlooked, but travel baseball, by drawing so many talented players away from their local programs, has really had an impact. I mean, there's data showing that Little League participation in some regions has dropped by about 50% since 2007.
Wow, 50%. That's huge. So it's not just affecting individual families, it's affecting the vibrancy and sustainability of those local community-based leagues that used to be like the bedrock of youth sports.
Yeah, it really is. And those local leagues, they're important. They're often where kids first fall in love with the game, where parents volunteer, where the emphasis is more on participation and fun than just, winning every single game. When the most skilled players leave, it can sort of dilute the talent pool in those leagues, which can make it less engaging for everyone else.
So it's a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, travel ball provides an intense, focused path for elite development, but on the other, it potentially weakens the foundational, accessible local sports infrastructure.
Exactly. And it also, I think, for some, it pushes them into something that might be too intense too soon if they're not fully ready for that level of commitment and pressure. So, yeah, it's not without its drawbacks and its controversies, for sure.
You know, Mason, we've talked about the incredible benefits and the really significant drawbacks and also the broader controversies of travel baseball. It all kind of leads us to this really big question, doesn't it? Is travel baseball actually worth the investment?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think for most families, it really boils down to, well, several factors, but chief among them, in my opinion, has to be the child's genuine interest.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's foundational. If the child isn't truly passionate, if they're not asking to be there, if it's more about a parent's dream or, just keeping up with the Joneses, then it's probably not going to be worth it. The commitment required is just too intense for someone who's not fully bought in.
Yeah, it can become a real drag, both for the kid and, frankly, for the whole family, if that internal drive isn't there. So assuming the child is serious about advancing, then I think it really becomes a balancing act, right?
Totally. It's about balancing those financial costs that we just talked about, which can be astronomical, with the potential long-term benefits. Are you seeing significant skill development? Is there genuine exposure? Is this truly aligning with their future goals, whether that's high school varsity, college, or, for the very, very few, beyond?
Right, exactly. Because, the costs are clear, but are the benefits as clear? Are you getting that quality coaching? Are they truly improving? Are they getting that scout exposure? Or is it just, going to a lot of tournaments without necessarily the desired outcome?
And then there's the time commitment, which, we've touched on. It's year-round. It's intense travel. You have to balance that with family life, with social life, with schoolwork. Are you sacrificing too much on those fronts for what you're gaining on the baseball field? That's a really personal decision for each family.
Yeah, it's a huge sacrifice for everyone involved. Missing family events, missing school, losing out on those sort of casual moments that other kids might have. It's a lot. And then, of course, the big sacrifices versus that potential collegiate or even professional exposure, which, again, is so rare. You have to be realistic about the odds there.
Yeah, every parent hopes, right? But the reality is that the vast majority of kids who play travel baseball won't go pro or even play in college. So the question really becomes, what else are they gaining from this experience? Is it the character building, the friendships, the life lessons learned through competition, regardless of whether it leads to a scholarship?
Exactly. And if it is those things, then fantastic. But if the sole driver is my kid is going to get a college scholarship, then you might be setting yourself up for some disappointment, because that's a tough path. It's really about the holistic development. Ultimately, it sounds like we're agreeing the child's interest should really lead the way here.
It has to, because if the goals are aligned and the support is there and they genuinely want it, then even with all the sacrifices and the financial outlay, the experience itself can offer truly invaluable memories, friendships, and
just immense character growth. It's more than just baseball at that point.
Yeah, it becomes a life experience, not just a sport. And that, I think, is where the true value lies for most families, if managed correctly.
You know, Mason, we've talked a lot about the costs and how substantial they can be. But for families who decide, okay, this is for us, this aligns with our child's interest and our family values, what are some practical ways to actually manage those expenses? Because they can be, well, overwhelming.
That's a fantastic point, Natalie, because, yeah, it's easy to look at those numbers and just kind of throw your hands up, but there are definitely smart strategies that families can employ to, mitigate some of that financial pressure without necessarily sacrificing the quality of the experience.
Okay, hit us with them. What's your first go-to tip?
All right, so number one, and this is probably the most obvious one, but often overlooked in its full potential, carpooling and shared lodging. I mean, think about it. You're traveling a lot, coordinating with other families for hotel rooms, splitting gas costs, even looking into RV rentals together for tournament weekends. It can make a huge difference. You're going to the same place anyway, why not buddy up?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about the money, right? It builds camaraderie among the parents, too. You're all in it together. What about gear? Because, kids grow, things break.
Exactly. And new gear, especially bats, gloves, they can be incredibly expensive. So my second tip is simple. Buy used gear or trade. Seriously, there's so many local buy, sell, trade groups on Facebook, sites like Sideline Swap, or even places like Play It Again Sports. Kids outgrow things so fast, often items are barely used. It's a no-brainer.
That's smart. And honestly, it also teaches kids a bit of, resourcefulness, I think. Moving on, what about actual financial aid? Is that even a thing in travel baseball?
It is, actually. My third tip is to ask about scholarships or club grants. Some clubs, especially the larger, more established ones, do offer financial aid. Don't be shy about inquiring about sliding scale fees or even work trade programs where you might volunteer some hours in exchange for a reduction in fees, or even sponsorships. It varies by club, but it's always worth asking.
That's really good to know. I think a lot of parents might not realize that's an option. What about, these big showcase tournaments? They sound expensive.
Oh, they are. And that's my fourth point. Limit showcase tournaments, especially for high school players. These can be a huge draw, right? The promise of college scouts. But the truth is, only attend showcases that have verified college coach attendance. Don't just go to every single one because it says showcase. Do your research, make sure the right eyes will actually be there. Otherwise, it's just a very expensive road trip. It absolutely does, Natalie. My fifth strategy is to select teams strategically. Not every travel team offers the same return on investment. You really need to choose a program that fits your budget and your development goals. Some teams are just about racking up tournament wins. Others are truly focused on player development. Understand their philosophy and choose accordingly. Don't just pick the flashiest, most expensive team if their goals don't align with yours.
So it's about doing your homework, essentially, like a lot of homework.
A lot of homework, yes. And that actually leads right into my next point, which is related to travel. Stick to regional tournaments. Flying or driving long distances frequently adds up incredibly quickly. Choose clubs that primarily focus on local or regional travel. You can still get great competition without, flying across the country every other month.
That makes so much sense. I mean, plane tickets alone, let alone rental cars and hotels, that's a whole other budget item. What about uniforms and all the team swag? That can get crazy too.
Oh, it definitely can. And that's number 7, uniform and swag budgeting. Don't overspend on team gear. Often, one travel uniform set is perfectly enough. You really don't need the $80 joggers, the custom bat bags, the matching hoodies, the spirit wear. Just get what's necessary. It's easy to get caught up in the look, but that adds significant unnecessary costs.
Right. It's easy to get swept up in the team spirit and, want all the things. But when you're looking at potentially thousands of dollars, every little bit counts. Anything else on the planning front?
Yes, actually, planning early is key.
That's my 8th tip. Book hotels as soon as tournament schedules are released. Last-minute bookings, especially in popular tournament locations, lead to massive price surges. Being proactive can save you a ton on lodging.
Oh, that's a great practical tip. And this might be specific to some families, but what if you have multiple kids playing sports?
Great question. My 9th point, ask about multi-sibling discounts. If you have more than one child involved in sports, especially within the same club or organization, always inquire if they offer family pricing or discounts for multiple registrations. Many do, and it can add up to significant savings.
That's really thoughtful. And finally, Mason, any last strategy for managing the overall commitment and cost, particularly regarding, seasonality?
My 10th and final tip, and this one is crucial for burnout as well as finances, rotate off seasons. What I mean by that is occasionally skip a fall or winter season. Let your child recharge, both mentally and physically. This not only helps prevent burnout, but also provides a much-needed financial break. Travel baseball is year-round, but it doesn't mean your child has to play year-round, especially when they're younger. Sometimes a break is exactly what everyone needs.
That's so smart. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And taking a break can make the seasons you do play more impactful, both on and off the field.
Wow, Natalie, we've covered so much ground today, haven't we? From what travel baseball even is to all the nitty-gritty details of joining a team, the pros, the cons, the controversies, and then, of course, those really practical tips for making it more manageable.
We really have, Mason. I think the biggest takeaway, at least for me, is that it really boils down to, the child's interest, right? And then if that interest is there, it's about balancing those financial costs with the long-term benefits and that time commitment with family and social life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer, that's for sure. And, while it can be demanding, when it's the right fit and managed thoughtfully, it really does offer those invaluable memories, friendships, and I think incredible character growth.
Definitely. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to Huddle at Home today. We hope this deep dive into travel baseball was super helpful, whether you're just starting to explore it or you're already in the thick of it.
Yeah, we'd actually love to hear from you. If you have your own experiences with travel baseball, good, bad, or anything in between, or even some of your own cost-saving strategies, please feel free to share them with us.
For sure. We love hearing from our community. And that's all the time we have for this episode of Huddle at Home. We'll be back soon with another topic to help you navigate the world of youth sports.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time.